Mustache Tales.
Yeah!
Hey, welcome to Mustache Tales, podcast with Chandrasekhar and MacArthur. Our guest today is the great Ryan Leaf. Hello, Ryan.
Ryan, welcome to our fledgling podcast, dude.
I don't think it's fledgling. I feel like I see it everywhere, but I follow both of you guys, so maybe that's it, because you guys just pump it out on your stuff and I follow you. I think it's great content.
Oh,
I love
you.
it.
Thank you.
Idaho
man.
and Cali, coming together.
We're coming from two different worlds, and your name keeps coming up. One, because I know we all know each other, and then when we had Kevin Conley on the podcast, I know that you set a project with him where you really laid out your entire life and journey. It's called Bust, and you told your whole story in like a 10-episode kind of serialized podcast, which Jay and I have talked about a lot. And for those that that don't know, Ryan has an incredible inspirational life that we've talked about a lot. He's just started really getting his story out there. He was a former professional football player. I won't comment on him as a golfer. I'll let Jay talk about that. But he's a father, and now he's a premier sports commentator. I wanted to start. So Ryan, we start every Mustache Tales with a little tale. I wanted to maybe talk about how we first met. When I was at a point in my life, I think like maybe I was doing something that I was really excited about, a project, and it didn't work out. And I felt like I got the rug swept from out under me. And I was going through a tough time. And I was thinking about just kind of the way expectations start and how you think something's going to happen. And then in reality, what really goes down. And I was pumping it out in the gym, like really in one of those kind of purging anger modes. And I thought to myself, this was years ago, man, right before I hit you up. I said, what happened to Ryan Leaf? I was like, because we were playing college football at the same time. You were playing Division I in the Pac-10, playing in bowl games. I was playing Division III in Maine. But, we had the same face mask. And like everyone in the country, I was engaged in that conversation of, who's going to be the premier quarterback in the league. This was 98, 99. You or Peyton Manning. And I think you phrased this yourself, that kind of the way you guys were juxtaposed was Peyton was the intellectual one and you were the emotional quarterback. I was identifying with you in my late teenage years, in my 20s, because I played the game emotionally as well.
Yeah.
So I sought you out. I'm going to bring you into this in a second. It always starts as a run here, but I sought you out and I found you at the Transcend. You had just started your process of service and giving back to people and helping people who had faced addiction issues. And we sat down, we had an incredible conversation. We had a series of meetings, and I found myself going up to Montana, to Great Falls, Montana, where you're from. You arranged a meeting with your parents, John and Marcia, who were so kind to accept the meeting. Except I'll give you what happened there, Jay, because I haven't told you this part. I got up, I spent a couple of days in Great Falls, Montana. I had not been up to that part of the country. I walked around Great Falls. It's a population of about 50,000 people. There's an incredible geological, it's a cliff and it's a buffalo jump. And I made the joke to Ryan at the time, it's where the tribes used to run buffalo off this cliff so they would fall, and then they would have this giant feast and they would kill them all. And instead of like going around individually,
Pretty sure the fall killed them, but
the fall killed them, right?
Yeah.
And for Ryan, coming from a small town and the journey that he went on, I was really interested because of what type of place Great Falls was, and I was very excited to sit down with his parents. So he gave me a call. I'm supposed to meet with his parents. This was years ago, maybe 6 years ago, outside his house, outside John and Marcia Leaf's house. I'm about to go in the door to get to know his parents and learn more about Ryan's story. And Ryan gives me a call and he goes, really quick call, by the way. Hey, Hayes, I just talked to my parents. They don't really want to see you, man. It's not going to work out. But thanks for going up there. It's just not something they're into. And I was like, what? And I sat in your driveway, I haven't told you this part, of your house for like a half hour. And I'm looking at your house in Montana with your parents there. And I'm like, there's no way I'm not going in after all of our conversations and how much you shared with me. There's no way I'm not going in this door and talking to his parents. So I went up to the front door.
Hayes,
and
can
your
I interrupt for 1 second? You were there because you wanted to play Ryan Leaf in the Ryan Leaf story. Am I right about that?
I was yes.
Okay.
I wanted to tell
Okay.
Ryan's story.
Wanted to tell the story, but he wanted to play it. Yeah.
I wanted to play it. I wanted to tell it. I wanted to share it, and we'll go into the nuance of why I think the story
Please tell me my parents let you in. I don't remember this, by the way. I don't remember this.
Yeah. Oh, and so not only did they let me in, they were so hospitable and incredible. And I was thinking, your mom, we started the conversation. I was on one side of the room. She was on the other. And what I realized through the course of the conversation was this actor coming up to LA, or this anyone from the outside, you had not really publicly started sharing your story yet, Ryan. They had their guard up, man.
Yeah.
And they thought I was coming to do another hit job on you and your family and say something negative or do some piece. But when I sat with your mom, or about 10 minutes into the conversation, she switched sides and she sat on the couch next to me, and we broke down like your whole shit. It was an incredible conversation. And I saw through all the steps of, what your experience like in Great Falls was, what your journey was like, being in the public eye. And I left with so much empathy and so much respect for your parents and what they went through. So, yeah, I mean, I can't believe he told me not to go in, Jay. Imagine going all the way up there. He tried to deny me that conversation.
I try to protect him because I feel like I feel like I hurt him a lot my whole life, and when I dragged him through and stuff like that. And I'll give you a good idea. The day I got out of prison, they came and got me. The only two people that would that cared at all about me. No one wanted to be around me. No one wanted. So we get back to the house. I spend the night there. I wake up the next morning, and I grab the newspaper as I sit down at the family kind of nook there to eat breakfast, and I open up the paper, and sure enough, there's a comic there, and it's just a caricature of me, and the line says, "Lock up your medicine cabinets, Ryan Leaf is out." And that's in my hometown newspaper the day after I get out of prison, and I was just like, this is the way it's going to be the rest of my life. This is how can I do this? So that's the type of thing that we had become accustomed to. And hey, I get it, I understand it, but that's exactly the type of thing we were trying to protect my parents from, and they felt maybe that was the same type of thing, and they probably asked me, "Hey, can you tell this person that we don't want to speak with them?" And that was my approach to it, I guess. I don't remember telling you that.
No, I could tell, because my takeaway was the town was, for lack of a better term, bullying your family in this weird way, because usually when someone achieves some level of notoriety from a small town, especially in Montana, never produced a first round draft pick, they would be pedestaled and they would be loved, and God, they had the knives out for you guys.
Yeah, I think that they had always wanted a professional athlete from here, and instead they got me, and that bothered them. That bothered them a lot, because I was not like the conservative, Joe Montana, my hero type of thing. My heroes were the Fab Five. I had earrings in, I had my head shaved, I had, black socks and shorts down to my, past my knees and stuff. It's just my generation, that hip hop generation, the early 90s, right? It was, it was NWA, and it was Pac, and it was Biggie and all that stuff. That's what we listened to, and Dre. That's just what it was, and that's what I wanted to be and how I wanted to play. Major Harris was my hero down at West Virginia, and Tony Rice at Notre Dame. Those were the guys that I looked up to and stuff like that. So it just wasn't. They got a professional athlete, but they got me, and that was the problem.
It sounds like the way Andre Agassi was treated. in a way. Like
Yeah.
he just wasn't fitting what tennis wanted him to fit.
And the fear around the optics of his hair, that was a big part of it, right?
Yeah.
The hair was such a brandable thing, and he started losing it, and the fear around all that stuff. And it was, for the longest time, I just had to try to make everybody believe everything is, I'm this perfect image, this Instagram part of it, but I'm not that guy. Like, I'm this like incredibly scarred and flawed guy that I just, when I finally was able to let everybody see that and be okay with it, that's when I finally got to really be me, you know, and that just took a lot of heartache, not only for myself, but my family and everything like that. So, yeah, I learned a lot from it, but I also learned that, you know, the difference about that, however competitive I was, what kind of attitude I had growing up, I was just a kid. These were all adults, and it would have gone a long way for me when I turned pro if I had came home and just forgiven them and let them come on the ride with me. Instead, I doubled it down and was kind of like, yeah, fuck you. I told you I was going to do this, you know, and that's the way I approached it.
Well, I remember going in your high school, they have like an athletic wall of fame. I don't know what it's like now, years later, but your name was not on that wall. And I know basketball was one of your main sports, and you were like an all-time leading scorer there. And then all the stuff you did with football. And I'm walking around this high school. I don't recognize any names on these balls. And there was a coach in there. I said, "Where's Ryan's name?" He just went, "Oh yeah, he's not on that wall." That makes no sense.
Yeah, it's you know what, and it's all good. You know, we're better without one another, you know. That they're doing fine, I'm doing fine. I don't need to be recognized for something, for a place where I don't remember an enjoyable moment from high school. And that's a hard thing to admit. I don't remember an enjoyable thing from high school. Maybe winning the state championship as a junior. But that's about it. So, you know, where I'm in the Hall of Fame is at Washington State, and I'm on the ballot for the College Football Hall of Fame this year. Would be pretty special to go in there. And those are
wow, that's news. I didn't know that. That's really incredible.
Those are the two places that I would just absolutely love to be represented in, because it's the most special time and the most special people who were around me.
So your relationship with Washington State has healed then, because I remember when you were on the lecture circuit, you were going in and talking to teams like Alabama and corporations and Clemson and being an inspirational story to athletes, and Washington State wasn't ready to have you back yet, but that's come back around.
Well, that had a lot to do with Bill Moose, who was the athletic director there at the time. There was kind of a mandate that Ryan cannot or should not be around the program. Like I said, I get it. You know, I carry a stigma, and so you know, I understood it. I understood it, but I didn't understand it, I guess. But the moment he just up and left in the middle of the night one time when like the budget came back and they were in the red, it was just, he just up and left and went to Nebraska out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And the guy they hired was Pat Chun. He came from Florida Atlantic. He had hired Lane Kiffin back after what went down at USC after leaving Tennessee, and resurrected his career there. And immediately after getting the job, he flew to Los Angeles, took me out to lunch, you know, got to know me, see where I was in my life. And then before I knew it, I got a call and was told I was being inducted into the Washington State Hall of Fame. And I remember standing in front of that podium that night, talking to everybody. Being a Washington State Cougar is one of the greatest things I've ever done in my life. And I stood up there and I said, the player probably deserved to be in here a long time ago, but the man hadn't earned it. And I think that's why I made it that much more special to me, because I think they were essentially giving it to the guy that I'd finally grown up, and you know, my wife and my son were there, and that's, what more could you want from that? So Pat Chun deserves a ton of credit for, you know, just wrapping his arms around me. The fan base never left me. They love me to death. I love them to death. It really just was, I think, probably Bill Moose trying to go out and get, you know, big donors to donate money to the school, and he didn't need that Leaf character being dragged along with it.
I mean, that was the story that I was trying to tell, and was at the early stages of it. You know, I think more people are recognizing it, but I had felt by sitting with you that you had, and your parents, that you had made that turn. And so it's cool to see you, sharing it on even in a larger stage now.
Yeah, it's pretty purposeful. I mean, the idea of what you thought your life of your dreams would be, and that would be playing football on Sundays, being a millionaire and a star. And that's what I'd always thought I dreamed of. And of course you get, when you get hit in the mouth in front of the entire world a bunch of times, it's all about how you deal with it then. And I dealt with it really poorly. And what it turns out is that when you make it about other people, your life gets better, which is, for a narcissist, that's crazy to think that's actually possible. And so I actually kind of do have that life now. And it doesn't revolve around me playing football. It revolves around me, being in the lives of my family and others. And that builds the foundation. And then I get to do crazy stuff like this, host my own show and call games on weekends. And, it really has become the life of my dreams because of what I went through.
Do you think, I've been listening to Bust. Is it Bust or Busted?
Yeah, Bust.
Yeah, Bust. I've been listening to it. I've just gotten to the point where your offensive lineman from high school shows up as a detective at your house to bust you for going into houses, right?
Yeah.
I have a couple questions. One is, do you think that had you been like loved and popular in grade school and high school, do you think you would have because you created a lot of enemies in high school, right? Do you think you would have had a different go of it? I mean, do you think it?
I don't know. I mean, childhood scars are there's a reason why, shrinks are in offices all over the world, right? I mean, a girl shunned me in high school, and I never had a good relationship with a woman again the rest of my life because I didn't trust them, and I, objectified them, until I found Anna. I was so resentful of these people. Who knows? Maybe if I'm beloved, that entitlement runs much differently than the entitlement of being a star athlete. We saw how it ran rampant after Washington State when I was told I was the greatest in the world, what that would look like. You never quite know. I will say this, people enabled my behavior for years and years and years. The fact that I didn't, like that moment when that former teammate of mine came to question me over some burglaries, I talked my way out of that. I got myself into treatment rather than into handcuffs. And I think that was probably some enabling behavior on his part, because he was just like, I remember this kid, we were teammates. We won a championship together. I don't want to, see him go to prison type of mentality.
Yeah.
Kind of like how parents do that with you, with addicts in their family. They don't realize that they're slowly killing you themselves by enabling your behavior. And what I really should have gotten was a swift boot in the ass and a handcuffs on my wrist immediately and thrown in prison for as long as it would have allowed at the time. But it took what it took.
It also took this cosmic timing of you being at the forefront of the opioid crisis, which now we've come to realize was an epidemic, and just the damage that it did to the country, and now stories are being told. I'm watching Dope Sick with Michael Keaton, and then Painkiller. Peter Berg has a new series.
That one was hard to watch, man. I was on the road last weekend finishing it up, watching Taylor Kitsch. Like, he does a tremendous job of showcasing what it means, and it was exactly the same format in which he went in because he got terribly injured, and a doctor prescribes him this. I have never taken another drug in my life. I smoked dope in Amsterdam because I was in frickin' Amsterdam, but I've never touched another drug in my life other than what a doctor's prescribed to me at that point. And so I know exactly what that can become and where you would go, the depths you would go to feed this habit, and how it affects your brain. So you're exactly right. This is a timing thing, because Purdue is paying out all these settlements to states. Now, the states are responsible for distributing that money. And it has to be done right, because guess what? Purdue's not going to stop making OxyContin, right? It's made them billions of dollars. They're not going to stop making it. It works for acute, terrible pain. It's needed. This is not going to go away. So you have to educate and make people understand what it is and what it truly can do. And that's what these states have had to deal with and have an understanding. I've been doing a lot of work with a bunch of different states. I spent the whole month of January this year with the state of Alabama and met their attorney general, and we really kind of walked through the types of things that are going to be important about transforming their rural areas around this, because it became such a problem in the poorest of places all over this country.
Well, but when it came to you, it wasn't known. And Jay, do you know the story of the and you shared this, Brian, anything we talk about today, that we can cut, whatever. But if you tell Jay that story of when you first, why you first started using the
about
pills
Vegas?
and yeah.
Yeah. So I'd been introduced to opiates after my first surgery, and I've had 15 of them from football. And it worked, man. It took my physical pain away. So it did exactly what it was supposed to do. And I had just quit football, and I thought I could just kind of disappear. And I'm in Vegas for a fight. And in exchange for the nice tickets, they usually announce the celebrities in the audience. And they said, like, Tiger Woods, Charles Barkley, I think Dr. Dre was there. Whole MGM Grand went berserk. And then they announced my name. And the whole place, Jay, just booed and hissed. And it wasn't like I hadn't been booed before. I mean, you play football, you walk into an opposing team stadium, you get booed. But you have armor on. You got the helmet, the shoulder pads, and almost kind of emboldens you to... And then you could go out and compete. And I was really good, so I could kind of shove it in your face. I believe you're a drug addict long before you ever take a drug. I think the behavior is always there. And so my addict brain heard, not only are you a terrible football player, but you are a fucking horrible human being. That's what my brain heard. And I was going to go to parties after this event, and there were Hall of Famers and Super Bowl champions, where I always felt judged and less than. And I walked into this room and saw an acquaintance of mine, and he offered me some Vicodin. And that was the first night I ever abused it.
Like you'd taken it before, right? You'd taken it before. But...
I'd taken it before. I'd taken it plenty before, but this would be the first time I ever abused it.
For recreation.
I mixed it with the alcohol I was drinking that night, and it did exactly what I needed it to do, and take everything away. None of the judgment, none of the fear, none of the less than. I didn't feel any better, but I didn't feel anything. And I think I'd been searching for that feeling of feeling nothing for my whole life. And now I had the answer. And then so that's the night that started it. 8 years of that, ultimately, until I woke up on a prison cell floor. That was what the next 8 years were, was constantly trying to chase that feeling of not feeling all that disappointment and failure and guilt and shame and all of that.
Is that something, but do you like feeling now? Like, you're no longer looking for that feeling, right? Or is it part of you always?
I don't look... I think a part of, my brain has been irreparably affected by it. And I will give you a perfect example of this. I'm 11 years, 3 months sober now. I haven't thought about pills at all. I mean, behaviorally, old behavior always crops up, and you have to address that and things like that. Like the addiction is a byproduct of the mental health disorder that's at the foundation. But what opiates can do to your brain and how they change the chemistry within, 11 and a half years sober, father-in-law comes and visits. He's getting older. He's dealing with some real issues in terms of some handicaps in joints and things like that. And we were sitting at dinner, and he just mentions in passing that this doctor had prescribed this medication to him called Norco. And I didn't know what Norco was. I probably should have. I'm an opiate addict. I probably should know what the hell that is. But I was in the office later that night, like putting stuff away for work, and I Googled it. And I found out what it was. It was exactly the drug I love to use. My brain did it. The impulsive nature of what it does and controls. And what did I start doing? I started sneaking around the house, figuring out a time that I can get to his bedroom, because I know that 11 and a half years sober, and I wasn't following through with the things I needed to get me to that place. So when when Dax Shepard came out a couple years ago and talking about after like 16 years of sobriety during the pandemic, how he relapsed like that, I thought that was one of the strongest things I'd ever heard from somebody to do that, to say it, because you don't want to admit that when you've been lifted up as this guy, and I'm doing it. And my wife knows me so well now. She already knew that I was acting weird, and I was about to come in the door of his bedroom. My wife comes barreling across the courtyard, opens up the door, and she's like, "What are you doing?"
Wow.
and she saved my life. This was literally 3 months ago. She saved my life because I had no control over what I was about to do. I had zero control over it. Like, I'm not impulsive about anything anymore in my life at all, but it goes to show how irreparable the damage that it caused in my brain, that the craving is like that. So how did we approach it this time? My wife and I talked to my father-in-law. I want him to stay with us. I love him to death. He loves being around his grandson and everything like that. So how could we come up with a solution? I went on Amazon and I ordered an RX safe. It was that simple. Like, we got the thing that is the difference maker. We got him this safe. He has the code and a key with my wife. They lock it up. I didn't think about it again. Didn't even think about it again. But that was the difference this time. We actually communicated about it with my family and everybody, and usually people around addiction, it's so stigmatized. You just keep it in the dark, you know? Like, if I feel like if I would have told my parents that this happened, like that shame part of everything would spiral back. We're like, please don't let anybody know about this. You know, you would have ruined everything. And so we found a positive and healthy, alternative to it. But that is a great example of the effect that it has on my brain still,
It's like what Chris Rock says, you're only as good as your options. And if that's on the table, you become vulnerable again. It's a constant practice. The moment, and I don't know if this is folklore or true, but when you were in prison and you had that influential cellmate of yours who asked you to come outside, and was it to play in a pickup football game? He told you how, because it seems like so on the nose that's really a moment that made you want to start giving back to some of these guys.
That moment didn't. That moment is actually a shit show, because it was like 10 days into prison, literally and this guy walks in and says, "We're playing a flag football game outside. Will you come be all-time quarterback?" And I'm just like, no, I'm not. And then I'm just like a little bit, then my ego gets involved a little bit. And I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I'll go out and fire it around. And, and sure enough, it was a shit show. I walk out there, looking through razor wire at my mountains I used to grow up fishing and hunting in. And then all of a sudden I start throwing it around a little bit, and there's more guards out there now, and the walkie-talkies are going off, and they're squawking like, "Leafs out here throwing, get your ass out here." And it's like the longest yard, and I'm burnt Reynolds, just, going through this thing, and I'm throwing it around. These guys can't catch shit, man. I mean, it's just bouncing off people, and they probably never caught a pass in their life. But sure enough, I fire one a little bit later. It bounces off a guy's hands, bounces into a defender's arm, and I just remember thinking in that moment, like, of course, I fucking throw an interception in prison. And that's the truth. And I walked in afterwards, and I was just so embarrassed and humiliated. And I was like, I was thinking all about me, and I'm like, never doing anything like this again. And that guy that asked me came into my room a little bit later that night, and he goes, "Hey man, I just want to let you know it was my birthday, and this was the best birthday of my life. I got to play catch with an NFL quarterback." And I was so still caught up in me that I didn't hear what he had to say. I didn't hear that I did something for somebody else and it made their life better. I was still hearing like what an embarrassment I was and everything like that. So that was like that could have been the first part of it. Now the roommate that I ended up getting, the one you referenced, who came along, the Afghan Iraqi war veteran, he got me to go down. He got me to go start going down to the prison library and helping prisoners who didn't know how to read learn how to read. And that's where the service part started to play in effect. The last 6 months I was in prison, that experience playing in that football game stopped me from going outside the rest of the time I was in prison. I went outside twice the 32 months I was in prison because of the embarrassment from that.
Didn't go outside.
I didn't look as sexy as I do now when I walked out of prison, boys. You guys should see that shot. It's not a good one.
You know, it's
the prison makeover show. That's not what changed it around. You didn't go outside, bro. That's
no
unbelievable. It's unbelievable to think
D.
of how insular you were then and how out there you are now. You know, talking to people and being in the public. I mean,
you know what I found? You know what I know now, and there's just an acceptance and a surrender to this. Like, everybody knows, like, remember from 8 Mile when Eminem's character B-Rabbit at the end goes up for the battle and he like throws all the shit that he would be made fun of for out there.
Yeah.
And so when the guy, like the Papa Doc or whatever guy, steps up to the mic, dude has no ammo. There's no ammo. Everybody knows my stuff, and I've owned it, and I've told them. So now it doesn't matter. It also has given me a bunch of freedom to be kind of like, say whatever I want to say. And people just are like, yeah, that fucking guy's a felon, man. Don't fuck with him, type of mentality. It's been kind of freeing. It really has.
Well, you're coming from an honest place.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Which is so foreign because I was the biggest liar my whole life, So I remember like at our engagement party, my brother walked up to Anna and said, hey, what, this is so great. What finally made you know Ryan was the one? And she said this. She said, he's the most honest man I've ever met. And Jeff, who you both know, fell on his ass laughing, because that's just not how he would identify me, as an honest person,
Right.
And so that's pretty cool. That's a pretty cool identifier to have now.
The question I have, I just want to find out, because I'm in episode 8 of this podcast. So I assumed that you went to prison for breaking into the houses, out in the rural areas. And that's not the case?
Yeah, it is. It is. I got arrested and charged with burglary, which was stealing the pills from the home.
So when the guy came in,
and
when the lineman came in, you said you talked your way out of it, though.
Yeah, but I talked my way into a rehab center, and then about a year later, after I had relapsed again, I finally forced myself into a prison cell about a year later because of it.
Didn't you ask to go back after you had like a 48-hour?
So that was when I got arrested for the final time. I convinced some bondsman about 80 plus days in isolation there. I convinced some bondsman to bond me out. I had no money, but I convinced a guy to bond me out. And my dad showed up, and my dad was like, you have to take him back. You have to take him back to prison. He doesn't have money to pay the bond. And the damn bondsman, like, he probably just assumes, whatever, this dude made millions of dollars. Of course he has got money to pay the bond. I'm bonding him out. And so my dad took me home, and probably the most difficult thing that my parents have ever had to do the second night I was there, because I was just so probably fearful of where I was going to go, what I was going to do. And I was like, I'm just going to go get as many pills as I can and take off for Mexico and ride it till the wheels fall off. And they asked me, they asked me if I would go turn myself back in. That had to be the hardest thing my parents have ever had to do. Because I knew how awful jail is.
Yeah.
Because of what I told them. And I can't tell you why I did it, guys. I'm not that guy. I'm not altruistic at all, especially in that moment. I don't know why I did. Maybe because the substance had been out of my system for 90 days or something like that, and I just had a little more perspective. I do not know why. But I voluntarily went and turned myself, or gave up the bond, and went back in and spent the...
It was for the original act of going into those houses when...
No, I never got charged for that. I started doing it again. It's the only way I knew how to get pills.
And you went in alone and whatever. The funny... yeah, go ahead.
I tell people all the time, like if you lived in like Great Falls and the surrounding areas of Great Falls, and you subconsciously feel like was someone in my house. I was probably in your house. That's that small a town. I was probably in your house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, the funny thing
Didn't that guy wake up from a nap?
He didn't wake up. He didn't wake up. He was sleeping there, and I still went through his drawers as he was sleeping right there. That's how messed up I was. And guess what? He had pills, which turns out maybe it was because he was sleeping there in the middle of the day. It's because he was sedated from his pill habit. And I probably made his world incredibly worse when he woke up and found out his bottle of 90 pills next to his bed was gone because I had taken it and he had made my day.
All right.
And
the cops asked for a description of who it was, and being out there, it's like, describe the guy who breaks into the house. What's he look like? And the guy's just like, Ryan Leaf.
Fucking Ryan Leaf.
Like, you don't need to describe him. Like,
I don't need to describe his ass. He's 6'6". He's got a big forehead and some buck teeth, and he's Ryan Leaf. You know?
My friend's wife, who eventually went into recovery, would come over to my house, and I mean, I was never a pill guy. Like, I'd go when I get a gum surgery, they'd give me 200 fucking
like
pills.
Everybody.
And I was like,
like everybody.
I like to drink too much to take pills. I'm like, I don't remember I took them. So I'm like, I don't really. So I'd leave them in my thing, and I'd go back into and I'd realize, one of my fucking friends took them, and I kind of guessed who it was, and I left her a note, and I said, I'll make up a name, Joanna. No. And I left it for her in the thing, and she came up. She goes, "What the hell is this supposed to mean?" And I'm like, "You stole my pills." And she goes, and she did. But the funny thing
is, how'd you know it was me? You go, I put your name on it, so it worked.
Yeah, it worked. But the funny thing, Ryan, is that when I first met you, it was on a golf course. It was on the golf course that we both belonged to in LA, and we started playing together. And a guy came up because we played a lot together for a while. I remember like you hit a drive like, I don't know, probably could have been 360 or something like that. And I hit mine maybe 250. And I'm like, what's going on? And you said, well, one of us is a professional athlete and one of us isn't. And I was like, that I love being insulted so much. From that moment on, I'm like, I love this guy. And people would come up to me. I remember a guy came up to me and goes, you play with Leaf, right? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, are you sure you want to do that? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, I don't know, man. I mean, he goes, that dude went to prison. And I'm like, and I kind of, I remember when you guys got drafted, and I kind of remember, but I didn't really watch Sports Center religious. I didn't know all the details.
No, you were trying to make it, man. You don't realize like the day I finally got a chance to kind of come up and play with you that day, like how big of like a Super Troopers fan I was, and I was kind of geeking out, and there's a little bit of that too for me. So you were doing your thing.
Yeah.
I'm not and so that's funny that people came up to you and said that.
The guy told me a story about how you went to prison. And he goes, he and two of his degenerate Montana friends got handguns and broke into people's houses and were stealing their narcotics. And I'm like, really? That's interesting. And I never looked it up. I just kept playing golf with you. I'm like, well, because you were in recovery. And I'm like, there's redemption. I mean, I remember you lost your sobriety chip, and we went back to the second hole on North, and we fucking looking around, and we found it. And I was like, and so up until this moment right here, in my mind, I'm like, he broke into a house armed with two other dudes, and I'm like, God, that must have been terrifying for the homeowner. And I mean, that didn't even happen. But what it speaks to is something.
A girl I tried to date post prison. Her boss told her that too. Like she's like on the phone before we went out on a second date. She's like, my boss told me you tied a family up in the house so you could go through their medicine cabinets.
Right.
And I'm like, you can Google my name, and it will tell you the truth.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, there's some, but yeah, I was like, it's just. It's just how it was, man.
I'm more surprised that, Jay, you thought that happened and you're so excited to talk to him. Like that wasn't a deterrent.
He's like this.
He's
like
still
this.
talking
This
about what a great
motherfucker-
guy he is.
Yeah, this motherfucker's gonna break into my house and pistol whip me and take my drugs, like my friend Joanne here. All right.
Like that's what you thought, Jay, and you're like, when's the next tea time, Ryan? We got to get back out there again.
He's such a good golfer that he was giving me tips, and I'm like, I'm getting better here, and that's in the past.
past is the
I
past.
think what you found out too about me, Jay, is how much golf means to me.
Yeah.
Like having told you that I went outside twice in 32 months while I was in prison. Like being outdoors,
Yeah.
and fellowshipping with some guys, like that that was foreign to me, and it meant a lot to be able to do that and find somebody who really liked to play golf as much as I did. And you were a busy guy, but we still found time to do that with one another. I think that's what brought Connolly and I together. That's how we met.
Yeah.
And we built something really special with it. We produced this thing that has helped a ton of people, and I feel that way about you. You've mentored my little brother who's in the field acting, so like that, in which you've guided him in a direction where he actually produced and sold his last movie.
Yeah.
And he credits you a ton for that. And I introduced you guys there too.
Yeah.
So I mean, you just meet good people, and the thing about golf too is, Hayes, you spend 5 hours with somebody immediately. I mean, you're good, and you see whether or not they cheat, whether they're all off in the rough and kind of kicking something or doing something like that. You learn about their character pretty quick. You're not going to play with assholes. You're just not going to.
No.
You want to spend 5 hours with good people, and so I think that's what's made this friendship stick. And then we both found out we're diehard Cubs fans, and then the life was tied in knots. Then after that,
That's right. That's right.
Despite the fact that Jay at the time thought that you had busted in with guns and tied a family
Right,
up.
right. He's
He
just like,
didn't
I don't
realize until just now that didn't happen.
Well,
still like the dude.
I was waiting
Still,
for
what a
this.
great-
I'm like, oh boy, the guns are coming out in this podcast, and I haven't been able to get to the end. So I'm like, oh, but the funny thing about that.
Did you did you get to the part where I got arrested at the border?
Yes, and that's the thing is that you had committed the crime in Amarillo, and then you went to Canada and got clean, and you're like, well, and then you're being prosecuted for the crime.
I went to prison, or I went to rehab 3 times, so I relapsed twice. So it's not a prerequisite for getting clean. It happens a lot. It's a matter of whether you get back up. So there's more to the story, and it gets worse usually as it goes on. And that was that storyline is just so out of there because I've never really had any interaction with law enforcement. And here I'm crossing the border, and I look behind me, and there's a SWAT team with machine guns, like telling me to get out of the car. It was one of the most frightening things I've ever experienced in my life. And, but it's a hell of a story. I know that. So
it is, but the way you talk about it, you're like, I did it so long ago. I mean, whatever, X number of months ago. And so then the news comes out that you were arrested at the border, and you're like, that's not what I was going to turn myself in. But
and everybody thinks it happened again.
Yes.
Wow. Yeah.
And that's the interesting thing about this kind of infamy, is that people are expecting this story to keep going like that. And they hear that like, well, yeah, what are you going to do? He's a fugitive. Wow.
Well, I mean, like my best thinking in my life took me to a prison cell. So like I don't make proper choices and decisions. I need help, a lot of help with that. And so that's what the last 11 years have been, has just been relying on others to really carry me. And I'm so incredibly grateful. You guys are 2 of those guys that have carried me, and without maybe even knowing it, in times that I probably needed it, especially early in my sobriety when Hayes was really thought my story would be impactful to others. And I think that drew our friendship. I remember when Anna and I came out to the beach and had dinner with you and Allie. I remember that. Those are really special moments for me and my family and stuff like that. So this is pretty cool. I loved when I saw this.
Right when you were.
I love when I saw this podcasting pop up, and I'm like, is he going to do like mustache ride comments? I don't know what's going to go on. I don't know.
So knowing now, when you go in and you share with younger athletes, and I know you do it across the different, and by the way, I can't wait to talk to you about the current college football landscape and all the changes that have gone on there. But when you go in and talk to guys that are in this atmosphere now, feeling the same heat and attention that you felt before people were getting paid,
Right.
what's the main thing that you share with them that you want to impart from your talk and your time with them?
I usually come in and kind of break it down on what the data is in terms of their chances to make the NFL, right? It's really minuscule. I'll be in a room full of 130 guys. This year I was at Duke, Missouri, A&M, Montana State, and Oklahoma. Those are the 5. I usually pick 5 schools every year in August to do that with. And I remember looking at the Missouri guys this last trip, and I tell 2 guys in the audience to stand up. And 2 guys stand up, and I go, that's how many of you will make it to the NFL. And then I tell one of the guys to sit down, and I say, that's the only one that will play past the vested average length of 2.8 years. And that brings into focus pretty quickly that this is just not data. This is the 1% of the 1% of the 1%. It's probably like, to your guys' point, it's what are the odds of making it in Hollywood?
0.
It's probably very equivalent, right?
Yes.
0.
Yes.
And so I tell them that. I tell them that, hey, I was exactly where you guys were 25 years ago. I was sitting in that chair, ready for my next season, but I had probably a much better situation. I was about to be the second pick in the NFL draft. And their ears perk up, and they'll listen. And then I start talking about choices, consequences, controlling what you can control, staying out of the result, breaking the things down that we do when it comes to football. Practice, practice, practice. So when the biggest moment happens, you're ready to make the right choice, the right decision in that moment. And so it's really about that. Nick Saban was the first coach to bring me in at Alabama. Couldn't have been a better referral because every coach in the country wants to emulate Nick Saban. So therefore, my dance card's full every August. And I love it because I also am a broadcaster. And when I walk into their offices after I have come and spent 3 days with their team and spoke with them and got to know them differently and things like that, when I walk in to do the game and broadcast it, they're more open with me. They trust me. They know I'm not going to burn them on air and things like that. And it makes it a much easier way to do my job as a broadcaster. And that's all because of me sharing my story, period. Just being honest about it.
It's just impossible to think, I can only speak for myself and some of the guys that I was around, that you're not invincible when you're 18, 19-year-old dude.
You think you are. You just think you are.
That you are, you can do no wrong. And especially if you're playing at such a high level of football and you have a national spotlight on you, what would make you think otherwise? Other than someone coming in who's been there and saying, hey guys, I know this story, I know how it turns out. And that's where I've been a little conflicted, because at the beginning when college athletes started getting paid, I thought for sure, when I look at the revenue that the league with the college football was bringing in and the television contracts and how hard it is to be a student athlete. And I said, yeah, these guys should get paid. Now I'm a little conflicted because they can transfer so easily. So what's to make you hang with adversity? If you've got a coach who's on your ass, busting your chops, or a guy you want to beat out, but you're not, maybe you'll beat him out next year. Maybe there'll be an injury. You don't know, but you're already out the door. Nothing makes you stick in the box right now.
It's the wild, wild west. It really is. I'm all for athlete empowerment, for whatever that looks like, whether they're getting paid for their name, image, and likeness or their ability to transfer. But I'm also with you. If the transfer portal would have existed when I was in college, where you could have just walked into the compliance office and say, put my name in the portal, I would have been gone after my freshman year at Washington State, because I got into it really good with a couple of offensive linemen. I walked into my head coach's office and I was like yelling, and I said, I'm out of here. But, we had a kind of come to Jesus conversation. Now they just can walk into the compliance office, not say one word to the coach, no one, none of their friends or anything. Just walk in and say, put me in the portal. Name goes in the portal. If you're a good enough player, somebody's going to find you, reach out to you, and you're going to think you're going to go through the whole recruiting process again. You're going to feel wooed and loved.
Right.
And if I didn't have to go through that adversity, we'd have never gone, and I would have never had a chance to go to the Rose Bowl and be who I was. So it benefited me. I'm also of the mindset, knowing how hard it is to make it to the NFL, and if you have an opportunity to go play one more year of college football somewhere so you can experience that, then by all means, I want that to happen. So I think it's just a lot to do with the fear of the unknown. We don't know what this ultimately looks like. There has to be some sort of regulation around the NIL aspect of things because of how the money's being funneled to the players and why it's more of pay for play. We clearly know that, and that's not what this rule was designated for. But since the NCAA flubbed it so badly because they lost in court and they just were like, the hell with it, you guys have this. There's been no regulation, and it's been kind of the wild, wild west, and we've seen coaches upset about it, and some disinterested, and some, like Lane Kiffin, who I spoke to the other day, talking about how, we know that we're not going to be able to build our culture at our program anymore. This is more about team building year to year because we may have a completely different roster next year, a la what Coach Prime has done at Colorado in his first year already, and he's had success with it.
Well, I think about it in terms of how it affects the team, but also look at the fan base now with the conferences being so dispersed, where you've got these West Coast states playing games, on the other side of the country. The whole point of going to a college with a great team was that, maybe you took a 4-hour road trip to go see them play an away game, but it was part of the culture and spirit of the school. These games would all be kind of close. And now, what you're in Oregon? You're going to drive to Indiana for games?
Or how about
not
this
the
one?
Same.
How about SC going to Rutgers on a Thursday night game or something like that? I mean, they do not care about the student athlete. They don't. This is about presidents of the university sitting in front of a spreadsheet making this decision. And this was inevitable. The realignment part, don't get used to it. It's going to disappear in the next couple of years because there's going to be a national collegiate football league with 2 conferences, probably with about 18 to 22 teams. The teams that can't, it's going to be outside the NCAA. It's going to be ruled by a czar. They're going to, get a huge media rights deal to put this out, similar to the NFL. But they're going to be college students. It's going to be odd and weird, and I don't know how it's going to work, but that's where we're headed. And your alma mater, mine in particular, most likely will be relegated, like they're being relegated right now. Pac-12 no longer exists, guys.
Right.
And for the first time ever, 8 of the top 25 teams in the country right now are out of the Pac-12. How could you not get a media rights deal with 8 of the 12? 8 out of the teams out of those 12 that are the best in the country at this time. It's just, it's absolutely stupid, and it shows how bad the commissioners of the Pac-12 and the people at the top, how they let everybody down.
So you see it becoming nationalized conferences, not regional kind of, because they don't mean anything anymore.
Well, I think when you separate the 2 conferences, when it's the National Collegiate Football League, there'll be 2 conferences, one of 18 to 22 teams in the other side, and I would assume they're an Eastern Conference and a Western Conference, and you divide the country right in half, and all the teams to the West play in the Western Conference, all the teams to the East play in the Eastern Conference, and then you have a playoff system similar to what they have now, in 12, maybe 16 teams at that point.
So they're going to try to build it like the NFL, sort of like.
Yeah, I mean, that's ultimately where it's at. It's where the most money is going to be made, and that's what. If the presidents can find a way to make more money, get more enrollments because of the university's football program, then that's what they're going to do, and that's why I talk about them just sitting in front of a spreadsheet in a conference room making these decisions.
I agree with that insight. It's just such a shame, because what is football other than regional rivalries when you could have a dog shit season, but if you win your one game at the end of the year and knock off that team that's right next door, it makes your whole season.
Yeah, I know that feeling. I know that feeling.
That's what
Washington State will probably never play Washington again because of it. So
crazy.
So what we really need to talk about, Jay, is that you were writing the script for the kind of the throwback medieval comedy film, and you were like, I got a great, I probably got a great part for you where you could be this axe murdering yielding guy. We'll have you do a cameo. And I was just like telling my friends and stuff like that. I might get to go be in it. And then I saw like all this publicity about it coming out. And I'm just like,
quasi.
What the fuck, man?
I have to tell you, I'm sorry. I fucking forgot. I flat out forgot. Well, of course you could have been. We could have put you in a big suit of arms with a big axe, and
Yeah,
who would have
I thought
done
it was
that?
perfect. I was just chopped somebody's head off and just like drank its blood and been like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
you got to understand.
I love that Jay would have. Jay offered that when he thought that you held people at gunpoint. Jay was still ready to
Probably he's
offer
like,
a
I don't
role.
know. He's like, I don't know if I want to like trigger some old old memories for him here or anything like that. I think I tried to pitch myself one time to Jay when we're putting out on a hole one time, and I thought about the Neil Patrick Harris cameo in
Harold and
the
Kumar.
White Castle.
Yeah.
Harold and Kumar go to White Castle, and how it's just this over exaggeration of this craziness of the guy.
Yeah.
I said, what you need to do is you need to make this like do Super Troopers again,
Right.
and I get brought in to talk to all your guys about staying drug free and doing all this stuff, and then like behind the scenes, I'm just in the back like with the all your other troopers just like smoking up and like doing lines and hanging with the strippers and going to Canada and hanging with the Mounties, all the fun stuff. Rob Lowe, that's and Jay's like, I don't know if that'd be great for your brand though, and I'm like, he's probably right.
I
probably
remember
right.
that conversation, and I remember
Yeah.
I just never want to be part of somebody's relapse.
Yeah.
I hate
Yeah.
to be.
I asked.
But their
Rob-
kickoff you're there for, Jay.
Rob,
Well,
right
I
there,
asked
babe.
I asked Robert Downey Jr. about that one time about like going and doing films where you have to portray being drunk and high
Yeah.
and things like that, and what he said, what a better way to tap into it. But yeah, you protect yourself around it. I don't think about it anymore. It's not something that's on my mind. What I don't ever want to happen again is like the ego and the entitlement piece. Like, and maybe if you put me in a movie and I get my my ego gets up or something like that, and I'm like acting and behaving like a little piece of shit like I wasn't when I was 21. That I've found that I've surrounded myself with the right people to keep me grounded, and it's been pretty cool to meet other, I guess what you would say, celebrities in California when I lived there, especially ones that live a sober life and are humble, but they are still famous. That was important to me. I started going to this one meeting where there were just the famous people in there. I just could, at any time I'd walk in and think that I was special or something, I go, no, I'm not special at all. I'm not special at all. And to see them live these sober, humble lives, or to meet individuals like yourselves that have had great success and are public people who are good people, like they're kind and they care about you, and that's pretty cool because you don't meet those types of people anywhere. And after the pandemic, for whatever reason, it seems like it's gotten worse from that aspect of things, of people really like caring about you.
Yeah. I mean, the thing about acting, believe it or not, is that those of us who have, like Hayes, like we try to get into character, and we try to like put a little bit of that. If it's an addict, just put a little bit of that attitude. Even when you're off screen, you're just trying to push it a little bit, and just So it can get very seductive. That sort of becoming another,
I remember
pretending.
Do you guys know Justin Hartley at all?
I know.
So he was on the biggest, TV show in America there for about like 4 or 5 years called This Is Us.
Oh yeah.
And he played this, model actor, which isn't far fetched if you ever know Justin. He's like maybe the most beautiful person you've ever met in your life, and incredibly kind, by the way. He asked me one day if I would come into the writer's room with him. His character in year 2 was about to go off the deep end. And I sat in the writer's room with them, as they were writing the season. And then, they thanked me, and it was what it was, or whatever, sitting with you, Hayes, and hearing something like that. And how are you going to portray it? And dude went out and killed it. I mean, he called me one night and said this one episode's going to air where, and what's funny is he ends up on like going back to his high school for his high school reunion where he's supposed to be this big star. And he ends up on the football field, like just crying, and just numbed out, like screaming to the cosmos, somebody help me. Like he couldn't tell anybody else. He just did that and was hoping that somebody would help me. And I thought it was incredibly powerful. And that's what really kind of started me. It was essentially my story told through this character.
Yeah.
And then that gave me more of an idea of what I wanted to do, because I knew that there was going to be, with the reach of that, millions of people watch that show. There was going to be hundreds of thousands of people that watched that and saw him go through that and get the help through that process.
Yeah.
That they were going to do it themselves. And that's what really spurred me on to start telling my story publicly, so that, and the way my mentor tells me, he says, you can't keep it unless you give it away. And I didn't understand what he meant by that. What he means is, I can't keep this peaceful, unchaotic life if I don't give mine away. And that's where it was spurned from.
Unless you admit it, like you go out there and talk honestly about it.
And that's by giving it away. That's what he meant.
Yeah.
You give it away by talking about it to anybody that wants to listen or needs it, and you get to keep that peaceful, unchaotic life. That's the price.
Right.
The price of what you get to have now is to rip the Band-Aid off. I think we did 35 speeches 35 times last year. I
mean, the funny thing about truth is that you find that people are really, really gravitate towards the truth. Like I'm really turned on when I hear the truth. And my dad, I talk about my dad, he, because he's seen all my movies. And, early on, he's like, I don't feel that is a very good film. And actually he says film, because that's how they say it in India.
Film.
And I'm like, because the guy doesn't lie. He's just like, and he goes, me, when you hear it's good, it's because I think it's good.
Good.
And he goes, and when I tell you and he goes, so you'll always know I'm telling the truth. And so I've always, even in show business, which is like a business of deceit and lies and trickery, I try very hard to just say what I actually think, and it takes me off the hook. Like I'm never wondering, oh, what did I say to this guy? I'm just like, here's what I actually think, and I know how you feel about it, but here's a way to improve yourself, and this is my honest opinion, and that's it. And it frees me. It fucking frees me. But when you talk about the truth, I'm like, yeah, it turns me on.
I don't watch any other sportscasts. Like I don't watch ESPN. I don't watch The Herd. I don't watch anything else. I do this for a living every day, and I want my whatever they are. I don't want them to be influenced by somebody else's take about something. Or it's my honest, as a former player, analysis on it. That's all it is. And I don't care what you think about it. I don't care if you think it's right or if you think it's wrong or whatever. It's how I feel about it, and I'm going to tell you, because that's the job I'm getting paid for and what to do. And that's what I think. That's what makes me, is so good at it. And I didn't think I'd ever be good at this. I mean, I listened to myself 10 years ago speaking, and I didn't feel like I could articulate anything well enough to, describe it in the best way. So
well, you've done that.
The show is called The Straight Line.
You talked about.
Yeah, it's called The Straight Line with Ryan Leaf. It works around the, sports betting aspect of things. And I wanted a way to, so we talk about lines a lot. So I thought, I'm on the straight and narrow part of it. I don't gamble myself. I just play one on TV,
You've also been incredibly honest about the CTE concussion stuff that happens with the league, while at the same time being a fan of football and analyzing it. Those two conversations can take place at the same time. Like, this is a documented thing that's happening and needs to be recognized and talked about as part of the conversation of both the NFL and college football. Like, there's not a lot of people that are able to do that. They literally have handcuffs on.
I mean, I don't think the NFL. I don't think the NFL likes me at all, which is ironic, because somehow I got a job working on Good Morning Football across the street here too, which is on the NFL Network. I tell the truth when they do something good or do something right, and I'll tell them when they don't, because, too many of my brothers. There's only 27,000 of us who ever played in the NFL. You can believe that? In 100 years, there's only 27,000.
Wow.
And they're dying. They're dying at young age, alone in a hotel room, because this brain disease has infiltrated. And I don't like the way we know it's violent. It's not like it just sounds so silly to hear the words come out of Roger Goodell's mouth, because I'm like, you're lying. Everybody knows you're lying. And we all know the NFL is bulletproof, so it doesn't matter. You can tell us the truth. Like, I guarantee you 27,000 of us who played the game probably would make the same decision. If you knew about it and didn't say anything, that's on you. If you did and told us, I'd probably make the same decision. I love football. It gave me everything. I think it's one of the greatest sports in the world. I think it gives people leadership qualities, skills, fellowship, all those things that go into it. I just know you can make it safer. And if you can't, at least the kids know it and they can make that decision. And they're so fearful of losing the billions and billions of dollars that they print, because if they admit to it, the kids' parents will have them stop playing football at an early age. Before you know it, that pipeline of players to the NFL will become obsolete. And I go, it won't. It's just like if you decriminalize, drugs and make it legal. People aren't going to be lined up around a Walgreens to go in and pick up the Vicodin. Not everybody's like me. It's not like that. So I would just rather have the truth. It's like my son. I certainly don't want him to play football. I've had a brain tumor. I have probably living with CTE, dealt with emotional, psychological, substance abuse problems that probably, resulted from it or caused by it. So the furthest thing I want is my son to play, but we're going to give him all the information, and then he can make that decision when he gets to high school. By that time, Who knows what football will look like? But also, he may not. He told me the other day, he said, "I don't want to play football, Dad." I said, "Okay." He's like, "I don't want to get hit." And I go, well, that's good. That's good. Most people don't want to get hit, bud.
Isn't he a really big kid?
Yeah, he's gonna be a monster. He's gonna be like 6'9". Yeah, he's a big boy.
Yeah, it's good to let them arrive at those decisions on their own. So they can. It'll help them. It'll help them keep going if they want.
He knows what Daddy did. He knows everything too, pretty much. Like he hears everything. We were driving the other day, and we had a school buddy of his in the back with his dad, and his school buddy points out a cop car drove by, and MacGyver, who's my son, kind of looks over at his friends like, "My dad doesn't like the police." And they kind of look at him, and he's like, "Why?" He's like, "Because they took him to jail." And I turned around and looked at him, and I said, "How did you know that?" He's like, "I heard you say it." And I said, "Well, yeah, he's probably been in the room when I've been speaking at something or something like that." And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "So Dad, that's right? You don't like the police?" I said, "You know what? Yeah, I don't like the police." And the poor little kid, poor dad sitting next to him, like, "Oh, what am I supposed to do with this information now?" And but yeah, he knows everything. We try to tell him everything and show him everything, and I just feel like I was put in the dark so much when I was a kid, and I'm just gonna give him all the light I can, and understand that ultimately it's gonna be his choice. I just want him to have all the information.
My wife she also doesn't like the police, and she's like this really hot, like skinny brunette, and she just drives around like a fucking race car driver,
maniac,
and she's like, "The fucking cops are fucking pulling me over." And I'm like, and she tries to indoctrinate our children against the police. And I happen to love the police because not only because I made a movie about the police, but the police have always been super respectful to me, even before I made these damn movies. And so
they saved my life.
I'm trying to counter program my children. I'm like, the police, they really, who's going to come get the bad guys? If Ryan Leaf comes in your house with a gun and a couple of buddies.
With a gun, who's going to fucking fuck him up?
So I'm pro police.
Hey, Jay, they showed up that night when I had been asking for help for so long, the sheriff's department, and they're the ones that saved my life. So I'm the same way. It's just funny. Just funny to the way my son sees it, that because they arrested you. Oh, at the same point, my wife got pulled over for speeding in our new little Connecticut community the other day, and it's a small community, and apparently it's already known that I'm living in the community, and he lets her off with a warning. And he walks away by the car, and my son, when my wife rolls up the window, my son goes, hey. And she's like, what? He's like, why didn't they take you to jail, Mom? And he just, I think he just assumes like the police now take everybody to jail. That's what. And so, we'll have to, he'll learn as he gets older. But I think it's kind of funny too.
You mentioned it, and this goes back to that first conversation that we started with your parents. Your dad told me that when he heard those sirens outside your house to come get you, he knew it was his only option. And he said something to the effect that it sounded like, the sirens of like angels coming, or it was like some type of rescue cavalry that was coming to do something for his son that he couldn't do himself.
Wow.
It's a great family, man. Your whole story is incredible, and you sharing it, I think, you keyed in on it. It's really what keeps it going, and probably hopefully gives back to you as much as you help other people.
It does. It's given me a ton of purpose. I know that. I'll just have such. I'll have such a. It'll just be my story. I don't know how to put it. My life will just be so much more impactful. Because I'm like everybody else. I'm this flawed human being who's trying to be better every day. I think that makes it more relatable, and that fills me with purpose and makes me a better dad. It makes me a better partner, and hopefully like a better person to work with. I think that's one of the more proudest things I've walked away from since I got back into the workforce the last 10 years. Because I'm sure people who work with me in the rest of my life were just like, that dude is awful. And when I just want people to walk away from it like, I'd love to work with that guy again. Would love to.
Yeah.
Love to go play golf with that guy again. Love to.
Yeah.
Though that's meaningful to me because I think people actually get to know who I really am. I'm not trying to be phony at all. I don't feel like I have anything to lose, really, because I should be dead.
That's a gunslinger, Jay.
I love it. Well, thanks, buddy. We really appreciate you coming on. I mean, that was incredible.
I miss you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So do we.
So if you get back east at all, the California dollar goes a lot further out here, and so we have a little bit of a bigger house and as a little guest place where you and the family can hang whenever you guys come. Just let me know. Just give me a holler.
Would love that.
That's fantastic. All right, buddy.
Thanks, Ryan. Great to see you, man.
All right, bye now.
Good to see you boys too. Thank you very much.
Mustache Tales.